Good afternoon, book. Today I want to really address a term that I have been using over the last several months, and that term is enculturation. Now, it's a term that I recently embraced and even really understood based on my readings from Ron Richart's book, Cultures of Thinking, 8 Ways to Transform Schools. So as a lot of you guys know, my business now is helping schools transform, and I'm getting a great education on helping schools transform through my work here in Saudi Arabia, and hopefully I'll be able to come back to America in the city, Baltimore, particularly to address some transformation issues in schools. But I'm getting a great education in Saudi Arabia because of the dire situations the schools here are here. And one of the things that the book confirms, that Ron Richard his books, he has many books, but his book confirms, Culture of Thinking, is this idea that the reason why schools are bad or good is the basic concept is enculturation. And from my experience, this enculturation is worldwide. It's just a human thing. Schools are good or bad or in between because of enculturation. Now, I've used that word a lot, and I don't think a lot of people understand what I mean by enculturation. I'm getting back soon because my time in Saudi, I've been here in Saudi too long now. It's time to get back. It's time to get back and get back in the mix, get back in the real fight. Even though I'll always cherish my time here, because again, I learned a lot about the world, myself, because there's just so many cultures here in Saudi Arabia. So you kind of knock a lot of birds out of one stone when you learn about other people and business and things like that. But now it's time to get back in the fight. It's time to get back to Maryland, get back to urban centers, and fight the good fight, especially now that I have kids. Just the idea of enculturation. So, and I use that word a lot, and I write that word a lot in my posts, and I've had a couple people message me and say, well, Ray, what is enculturation? I'm not sure what you mean by that term, enculturation. And in many dictionaries, if you look up the word enculturation, you won't find it. But it is a word. And it's a word that's catching steam now, particularly through this idea of transforming schools and continuous improvement. So what is enculturation? Well, you see, when you look at the word enculturation, you see culture, right? So the way I look at enculturation is due by breaking it down this way, and I'm going to break it down using other words. So you have culture. We know what culture is, right? It's how people live. Okay, culture comprises of how people live, how people think, how people operate, the rituals, the traditions. That's culture, right? Food people eat. That's culture. So culture is everything. How you live, your thinking, your perspective in a particular region or place. That's culture. And so taking the averages or the typical behavior of people from a particular region or particular tribe or particular country, that's culture. So then let's look at another word. Let's look at the word context. C-O-N-T-E-X-T. I have to spell it out because of my Baltimore accent. Context, right? So what is context? Well, Ray's definition of context is everything. Context is the situation, right? As my mentor told me, has always preached to me, context is the situation. And we live in context, right? We live in context. Our language is formed based on context. So everything that we do is contextual or contextualized. Right? Context, right? Somebody's yelling. They might not be yelling because they are mad. They could be yelling because they're happy, right? So we have to look at the context of the situation. So everything that we do, from the moment that we wake up in the morning, or whenever you wake up, to the moment you go to sleep, and even while you're asleep, because your dreams are often contextualized based on what you ate before you went to sleep, what you experienced through that day, your stress levels, all that stuff. So even while you're sleeping, your dreams could be contextualized, right? Based on your experiences. So everything is context. Context is the situation. Okay? And then you have another word that I just used, contextualized. Okay? And contextualized is the verb form of context. So context is the situation. Okay? Contextualize is how you go about handling something based on the situation. All right? How do you go about handling something based on this situation? All right? Then you have another word. You have concept. C-O-N-C-E-P-T. Concept. Now, concept and context, they're very, very related. All right? In action, they're very related. All right? So in implementation, they're very related. Concept is the idea. All right? Now get it. Context, C-O-N-T-E-X-T, is the situation. Concept is the idea. So your context is often influenced, or how you see the context of a situation, or how you see the context, which is the situation, is also influenced by your concepts, what's been instilled in you. Follow me now. All right? So context is a situation. Concept is the idea. All right? What's been instilled in you. All right? So then you have conceptualized, which is how you go about implementing your ideas. That's normally based on what? The context, so you can what? Contextualize. Woo. Then we have another word. We have the word indoctrinate. You follow me? You guys follow where I'm going here? Then you have the word indoctrinate, right? So indoctrination, or to indoctrinate, which is a verb, means to give somebody your ideas, to spread your ideas, to install your ideas on someone else, right? Because indoctrinate is normally a very human word. So we don't indoctrinate computers, right? We install or we download information on computers, right? So we don't indoctrinate computers, we indoctrinate people, okay? So indoctrinate is installing or presenting or influencing your ideas, your concepts on other people, inside of other people, so they can contextualize differently. They can contextualize and conceptualize different. You see what's going on here? You see this? So you have indoctrination. And indoctrination is when that process, the science behind indoctrinating someone, making people believe what you believe, right? And one vehicle in that is religion. Another vehicle in that is propaganda. There's many forms of indoctrination, right? Where we indoctrinate people, right? And based on these words or these concepts, which you have context, concept, indoctrinate, contextualize, conceptualize, indoctrination, you get enculturation. Get it? You get enculturation. So enculturation is the process of people being indoctrinated through what? Their concepts, or through conceptualization, and how people conceptualize. So it determines how people deal with what context, the situation. So if you're really thinking about it, it's a breaking. Enculturation breaks down every element of how people do what they do. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're middle class, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, whether you're Buddhist, whether you're agnostic, everyone experiences enculturation. Everyone. So when I use that word enculturation, what I'm really talking about is the total package of how we get to be where we are. So for me as an educator, as someone who considers himself a change agent as it relates to education, I have to deal with indoctrination. Alright? I have to deal with, not indoctrination, but enculturation. Because enculturation is the total package. And where we normally fail in making things better, or where we normally fail in our continuous improvement plans, or our improvement strategies, is we either deal with indoctrination, right? Which is only one step of enculturation, or we deal with contextualization or conceptualization, but we never deal with the systemic full package of enculturation, which is day one. We never quite deal with enculturation. And again, enculturation is the whole entire process of how somebody got to it, how they arrived at the ideas that they have inside of them. And a lot of times, and what we know about improvement plans is that reflection is the best way to improve. Okay? We always say that you have to reflect. I tell teachers all the time, if you want to become a better teacher, you have to reflect on your current teaching and your past teaching to improve your future teaching. Reflection is the best method to self-improvement and developing a continuous improvement plan, whether it's for yourself, for your business, for your family, for whoever. It's reflection. And in order to reflect, you really have to understand enculturation. You can't reflect on one part. You have to reflect on all parts. And enculturation really deals with all parts versus context or concept or indoctrination, right? So like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Black Lives Matter. Now, a lot of people know that, I don't like the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's not that I don't like the idea of Black Lives Matter. I like the idea of it because Black lives do matter, just like anything else. Black Lives Matter. What I don't like about the Black Lives movement is that it only deals with one piece, and Black Lives Matter deals with indoctrination, right? It deals with black people being institutionalized, which is a part of indoctrination, or the vehicle of indoctrination, and it doesn't deal with the self part, the self-development part. So under Black Lives Matter, no one's talking about how black people have to reflect on their actions. So we're looking outward with Black Lives Matter instead of looking inward. And you can look out. There's nothing wrong with looking outward, but in any solution, you always have to look inward too. So that's my problem so that's one example of when we go to address an issue, we fail often because we don't look at the entire picture. Enculturation, it forces you, if you look at enculturation correctly, it forces you to look at the entire picture. It forces you to look at your entire picture, and it breaks it down in a very scientific way. All right, you get to look at indoctrination. You get to look at how you've been indoctrinated. You get to look at conceptualize and where your concepts come from, and context, which is context being that situation, those everyday experiences. So again, let me use another example. We have kids. Let's say we're in the ghetto. We're in our urban center, and we have children in urban environments, whether they're white or black, making bad decisions. Okay, we have young people making bad decisions, and we're trying to figure out why this young person is continuously making bad decisions, even though he has gone to jail, even though we give him counselors, even though we try to put him in programs, we try to do self-development. And what I noticed as somebody who has gone through all of this, as far as trying to help young people out, is that we deal with one piece of it instead of dealing with the whole entire person, right? And therefore, the person continues to make the same mistakes all the time. Same thing with teachers, right? A lot of times we address an inward or outward thing with the teacher, but we don't address the entire package, and no matter how much money we spend on professional development, we're not getting positive results, meaning test scores are not rising, behaviors, classroom management is not improving, and all these things, because we're not looking at the entire picture. We're not looking at enculturation. And enculturation allows us to look at the context, the concept, and indoctrination. And if you're looking at all of those three pieces under enculturation, it forces you to look inward and outward. And so a lot of times, I don't think people understand my position. My position and the way I see things, everything, is I try to look at the entire picture, and I try to look at inward and outward. Inward and outward, regardless of the situation. Because in every problem, you are the solution. The best movie that addresses this is The Wizard of Oz. Because The Wizard of Oz dealt with this idea of enculturation. It dealt with the issue, the problems, this idea of problems, and how you deal with problems, and how do you network, and how do you find solutions. And it deals with this issue of inward and outward thinking as it relates to finding solutions to problems. And what Dorothy learned at the end of the movie was what? She didn't look inward enough. She was looking outward. She was looking for other people to solve her problems. She had to find the wizard. She got all these friends. But she didn't look inward. And if she was able to look inward, she would have realized that the good witch had put the ruby slippers on her feet, and that she had always had the opportunity to go home. But she never gave herself a chance to look inward. So, enculturation, in summary, Enculturation really deals with looking inward and outward. And I think that's the biggest problem that's going on in society today, especially American society, is that we do a great job of looking outward. Republicans can tell you what the Democrats are doing wrong. Democrats can tell you what Republicans are doing wrong. Black people can tell you what white people are doing wrong. White people can tell you what black people are doing wrong. Poor people can tell you what rich people are doing wrong. Rich people can tell you what poor people are doing. Everybody is able to tell everybody. You can tell your husband what he's doing wrong. I can tell my wife what she's doing wrong. But we haven't been trained to reflect, to do true reflection, and ask ourselves sincerely, what am I doing wrong? How am I playing a role in this devastation, or this in this broken problem, or in this problem? That's gonna be redundant. In this problem, what role am I playing? And often in any situation, that's the best way to look at things. Is what role? What's the outside influence, and what's the internal? What's the external influences, and what are the internal influences? And we're trained to look at the external, and we're not trained to look at the internal. Because often the internal is dark, and often the internal, we have put that internal thing in the back burner, or we hid it, and we don't want to address it. And this is why people find themselves married to 2 or 3 people, and find going from job to job to job, and continuously having bad credit, and continuously having internal family crises, and continuously getting into fights, or continuously being suffering from drug addiction. It's because we don't want to look at our internal issues. We only want to look at things externally. And until we start and able to look at things externally and internally, you'll always continuously find yourself in some type of problem. Continuously with bad credit, continuously with failed relationships, continuously going from job to job to job. Continuously, whatever your monster is, you have to look at that monster from a perspective of enculturation and digging deep, and so you get able to properly reflect, look at the internal influences and the external influences, so you can come up with the best solution. That's enculturation. That's why I use the word enculturation. I hope someone got or received something out of this. I know I made it more complicated than what it probably should have been, but hopefully someone gets something. My teachers in Saudi, I'm going to make sure you get the chance to watch this video, because we deal with enculturation as it relates to the cultures of thinking. Peace.